Breaking tonight, the U.S. filing criminal charges against Hamas leaders for the October 7th attack. The new indictment just unsealed over the brutal murders of dozens of Americans and those taken hostage. That move as rage in Israel reaching new heights. Demonstrators storming the streets for a third straight night, demanding a hostage deal. Prime Minister Netanyahu refusing to bend to their demands, and the protests popping up again at Columbia University, the epicenter of college demonstrations just months ago. Also tonight, Zelensky's plan for peace. Our Richard Engel sits down with the Ukrainian president. What he's saying about a new proposal to end the war with Russia. That announcement as Russia launches one of the deadliest strikes on Ukraine since the war began. Dozens killed and nearly 200 injured as missiles hit a Ukrainian military facility and a nearby hospital. China's suburban spies, a former top aide to New York Governor Kathy Hochul, charged with acting as an agent for China. The FBI arresting Hochul's ex-deputy chief of staff and her husband months after raiding their multi-million-dollar mansion in a posh New York suburb. The sprawling indictment accusing the staffer of laundering millions to buy homes, even a Ferrari. Political fake-out, new ads appearing on the streets of Philadelphia showing Vice President Kamala Harris in an Eagles uniform. The signs falsely implying the football team endorsed Harris, and the mystery of who may be behind the stunt. Buried in coal, the dramatic rescue of a man trapped for hours in a train car carrying coal. The extensive effort to pull him back to safety. And the skincare brand putting inclusivity at the core of their products. The company employing people with disabilities in the hopes other businesses will follow their lead. Several employees speaking out about how the work has dramatically improved their lives. And tensions rising again in Venezuela. The troubling new fallout following the contested presidential election. Top story starts right now. And good evening. We are following breaking news at this hour. The U.S. Justice Department charging top Hamas leaders in connection to the October 7th attacks. It comes as demonstrations in Israel show no signs of slowing down. Protesters enraged over the brutal murders of 6 hostages. But first, to that newly unsealed indictment charging several leaders, including the militant group's political leader, Yahya Sinwar. 6 leaders are accused of planning and perpetrating the attacks. They're facing a number of charges, including conspiracy to murder U.S. nationals. The indictment is specifically related to the deaths of more than 40 American citizens, as well as those who were taken hostage or remain unaccounted for. That announcement comes amid fresh waves of protests in Israel following the recent murders of 6 hostages. Take a look at this new dramatic video showing protesters clashing with police there. Grief and fury fueling a third straight night of mass demonstrations. Tens of thousands urging Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to strike a ceasefire deal and bring the remaining hostages home. The Prime Minister remaining defiant, insisting that Israel remain in control of the Egypt-Gaza border, a key sticking point in ceasefire negotiations. We're going to explain that in a moment. Back in the U.S., students starting a new semester at Columbia University met with new protest on the same campus that was a catalyst for college demonstrations just a few months back. We have much to get to this evening. We want to start with NBC's Raf Sanchez in Tel Aviv tonight for us.
Tonight, thousands rallying outside Israel's defense ministry as the largest protest since the start of the war surge on. Public fury mounting over Hamas's murder of these 6 young hostages and the Israeli government's failure to bring them back alive.
Our government are heartless people.
Night after night, protesters have taken to the streets demanding Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu make a deal to bring the remaining hostages home. The question is, will he listen?
So far, the answer is no.
These murderers executed 6 of our hostages. They shot them in the back of the head. And now after this, we're asked to show seriousness? We're asked to make concessions?
Netanyahu refusing to withdraw Israeli troops from the Egypt-Gaza border, saying a retreat would allow Hamas to rearm. But it's a key stumbling block in negotiations. Egypt tonight accusing him of obstructing a ceasefire deal. The U.S. says it's against the presence of Israeli troops in Gaza long term.
We've made clear that we are opposed to the reoccupation of Gaza.
Alex Lobanov, a father of two, was among the hostages killed. A source tells NBC News his widow refused to meet Netanyahu during a condolence visit. The Israeli leader has not met the family of American hostage Hirsch Goldberg Poland, who was buried yesterday in Jerusalem.
Finally, my sweet boy, finally, you're free.
Israel carrying out more strikes in Gaza today. But the UN says it's pushing on with a polio vaccination campaign, getting doses to more than 160,000 children over 2 days, even as war rages around them.
Raf Sanchez joins Top Story tonight from Tel Aviv. Raf, I know you have some more reporting about the U.S. indicting those Hamas leaders.
That's right, Tom. The Attorney General announcing indictments against 6 top leaders of Hamas. Of those 6, 3 have been killed in the last couple of months by Israel. Of the living figures, the main name is Yahya Sinwar. He is the top leader of Hamas, and he is believed to be not only the mastermind of the October 7th massacre, but the key decision maker for the terrorist group. He is hiding somewhere in Gaza, likely in the tunnel network under the south of the Strip. And the reality is, if anyone is going to find him, it is much more likely to be the Israeli commandos, the Israeli intelligence agents who are searching for him day and night, rather than U.S. law enforcement. Tom.
And then, Raf, I want to go back to something that was in your report, right? What's at issue currently over the ceasefire, these troops on the Egypt-Gaza border? Is this something you think that there's any daylight between Netanyahu and the other groups on, or is this something that Netanyahu is just not going to move?
Tom, every indication at this point is that Netanyahu is doubling and tripling down. He gave this presentation to the Israeli people and to the world, explaining that he sees the presence of Israeli troops on the Egypt-Gaza border as absolutely critical. He says if they leave, there's the danger that Hamas will rearm, that weapons will continue to flow into Gaza. He raised the possibility that hostages could be smuggled out of Gaza, taken away to Iran. He's under a lot of pressure from the far right of his government to stick with it. But the U.S. is saying there needs to be flexibility, not just from Hamas, but also from Israel if there is going to be a deal. And I think the question for the mediators is there some kind of creative solution here where they can address Israel's security concerns without Israeli troops necessarily being stationed on that border? Tom.
Raf Sanchez leading us off tonight here on Top Story. For more on this conflict, I want to bring in Gidi Greenstein. He's a former Israeli negotiator and the founder and president of Reut Institute, a platform for policy research on issues facing Israel and the Jewish people. He's also the author of Insights, Oslo and the Peacemaking Process 30 years later. Gidi, thank you so much for joining Top Story.
Thank you very much for having me.
I want to start with the U.S.'s move, right, to indict those leaders of Hamas. Will that do anything? Does it have any teeth?
I think it has a symbolic importance, but practically, Yahya Sinwar, if he makes it out of the tunnels of Gaza, he's probably going to be taken by the Israelis. So I think that ultimately, no. The answer to your question is no.
Okay, let's show some of the video from Israel we've been watching over the last few nights. Hundreds of thousands of Israelis protesting Prime Minister Netanyahu. It's been nearly a year. Some hostages have been released. Many have been killed. Many are still being held in those tunnels in Gaza. Did Netanyahu manage this situation incorrectly?
So the war obviously began with a horrible debacle on October 7, the terrorist attack of October 7, where the Israeli line effectively collapsed. There's a lot of history that went into that, but that was probably the worst moment in Israeli national security in the last decades. Moving on, Netanyahu launched into a war without an exit strategy, meaning he did not define the political and diplomatic objectives of the war, which means that a lot of tactical military achievements that were gained during the war were effectively evaporated. Moving forward, he actually established unattainable goals for the war, and therefore confusing and making it almost impossible for the military to consolidate the achievements. And now we're looking at the issue of the prisoners. A lot of people in Israel believe that Israel cannot win the war if those hostages are not being brought back. This is sort of a widespread belief. And therefore, the position that Netanyahu is taking right now, which severely compromises the prospects of ever bringing back these hostages alive, is actually preventing Israel from achieving one of the declared objectives of the war, which is to return the hostages. So Netanyahu here is in a bind, and effectively, most Israelis believe that he's actually playing the political game as opposed to the strategic game.
So you were a former Israeli negotiator. What would you tell Netanyahu to get those hostages back? Is there any strategy to get them back?
Basically, Netanyahu has dealt with Hamas since 2009, and he has done deals with Hamas and understandings with Hamas, and he knows what I'm telling you now. The only way to work with Hamas is either through the Egyptians that control the border and have a leverage over Hamas, or with the Qataris that put in money, and the leadership of Hamas is in Doha.
But they've been at the table the whole time.
Yeah, they've been at the table. And therefore, if Netanyahu wants a deal, and there is a huge question mark whether he wants a deal on the hostages, to return the hostages.
You're saying he does not want the hostages back?
I'm saying it's not a top priority for him right now. Because he wants to keep his coalition stable. He has a coalition with far-right parties, and their concern is that if there is a hostage deal that leads to a ceasefire, that will unleash a chain reaction that eventually may lead to political compromises that they will not accommodate. Meaning there is an expectation that once there is the ceasefire, there will be some sort of an engagement on the day after and the political horizon of Gaza, and that would require dealing with the reunification of Gaza and the West Bank, political process, potentially even talking about the two-state solution. He doesn't want any of that.
We have less than a minute. The big issue for Netanyahu, he has said, is keeping his troops there on the Egyptian-Gaza border because he believes Hamas will get arms. Does he have a point?
The answer is yes, he has a point, but this is a 30-year issue, the Philadelphia Road. We've been in and out. Netanyahu knows that if we stay in the Philadelphia Road, we effectively maintain control over Gaza. That means that Israel will be seen as responsible in occupying Gaza, responsible for 2 million people. This has tremendous administrative, diplomatic, and military implications for Israel long term. So Netanyahu actually knows that he cannot hold together staying in the Philadelphia Road on one hand, and he's pledged that Israel will not resume control of Gaza on the other hand. Those two statements are diametrically opposed, and that's why basically his strategy, I think, will eventually collapse.
Giddy Greenstein, we appreciate this conversation. We'd love to have you back on and talk about this more. We do want to move on now to Ukraine, where tonight there's a rising death toll after Russia launched one of its deadliest strikes since the war began. Ukrainian officials say more than 50 people are dead and 200 are injured. The attack coming amid escalating warfare as the conflict intensifies. And in an exclusive interview tonight, our Richard Engel spoke with President Zelenskyy on Ukraine's relentless fight and now his plan for peace.
Ukraine says 2 Russian missiles hit a military academy and a nearby hospital in the Ukrainian city of Poltava, killing dozens.
What can you tell us about what happened?
That's another tragedy in Ukraine. There was a missile strike. The missile flew some 3 minutes, and people didn't have time to go to shelter.
But was it a revenge attack? The strike was just over the border from the Kursk region in Russia, which Ukraine occupied last month. In his first interview since his surprise incursion, Ukraine's President Zelenskyy today told NBC News invading Russia was a preemptive strike to stop Russia from taking more of Ukraine.
We did have understanding from our intelligence that Russia was planning to set up a buffer zone. We had to make the military operations so that the buffer zone was made not by them, but by us.
Now you've captured this territory in Russia. So the big question is, what do you plan to do with it?
We don't need the Russian territory. Our operation is aimed to restore our territorial integrity. We don't need their land.
But conceptually, you have this territory now. You say you don't want to keep it long term.
Conceptually, we will hold it. Conceptually, we will hold it.
He told us they kept the operation secret.
Did you really not inform the Washington, the Biden administration, that you plan to do this?
No, we didn't inform anybody. And this is not the question of distrust. We informed many institutions in our state, inside Ukraine.
Do you think your international partners will go along with you? The United States signed up to defend Ukraine and defend Ukraine's borders and push out the Russian troops. I'm not sure the U.S. signed up for Ukraine occupying Russia.
Our partners do know that we had the full right for that because we were protecting ourselves.
Is the plan to take more territory?
With all respect, I can't speak about it. I think that the success is very close to surprise.
Richard Engel joins us now, fresh off his exclusive interview. He is in Kyiv tonight for us. Richard, I know you have some new reporting, right, tied to Zelensky's plan, if you will, that incursion into Russia, but also about a larger peace plan. Let our viewers know what you've learned.
So I would say the 50% of our interview, and we sat down for about an hour today, was focused on the purpose of this invasion. Why did President Zelenskyy at the end of the day authorize this move into Russia? It's a totally different kind of war, different kind of strategy. It flips the script. So what does he hope to accomplish, aside from boosting morale and showing Ukraine's backers, including in the United States, that Ukraine can do it? And I think that was a key part of it. And I asked him, I said, so what do you hope to accomplish from all of this? And he says that it's part and parcel of his, what he calls a victory plan to end the war. And he says that holding a part of Russia, this part in Russia, potentially more other parts of Russia, is going to help bring this war to a more rapid conclusion because it will encourage the United States to take more bold action, that he showed that there are no red lines, that that Russia can be confronted directly, that Putin isn't as powerful as the world thinks, and that effectively Russia under Vladimir Putin isn't as strong and as capable and shouldn't be taken as seriously as the United States does. Whether he's right, whether he's wrong, he thought that was a lesson that should be learned from what Ukraine has just done. And he's going to now take his, quote, victory plan on the heels of this incursion to the United States. This month, he told me he plans to brief President Biden directly, to brief Vice President Harris directly, and candidate Donald Trump, former President Trump, directly, because he doesn't know who is going to win. But he wanted to wait until after this Kursk operation, after it was a success, or potentially had it been a failure, but he wanted to go in with this operation and brief them personally and saying, look what we can do, look what we're capable of. We just need a little more support and we can end this war in what he calls his victory plan for Ukraine. So that's what he plans to do on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly meeting in New York just in a couple of weeks.
Richard Engel with a lot of new reporting there on the situation in Ukraine. Richard, we thank you. Back here in New York, we're following a shocking arrest of a former top aide to Governor Kathy Hochul. The FBI accusing the former deputy chief of staff and her husband of essentially being spies for China. An indictment released earlier today detailing years of alleged money laundering and fraud, including efforts to allegedly block diplomatic ties between Taiwan and New York. NBC's Jonathan Dienst has the details.
Linda's son walked out of Brooklyn federal court to a crush of cameras after she pleaded not guilty to the charges, including allegedly working as a foreign agent for the Chinese Communist government. Son's husband, Chris Hugh, also pleading not guilty to charges he helped launder millions back to the U.S. from China and not paying taxes on any of those funds. One defense lawyer, Sept, criticized the indictment.
Perplexing, overly inflammatory. We're looking forward to our day in court.
They both were arrested at their $4 million Manhasset home this morning. Linda's son had once been Governor Hochul's deputy chief of staff, but the FBI says she abused her position to support communist Chinese officials. The alleged scheme went on for years during time she served for both Democratic governors Hochul and Cuomo. The indictment lists allegations of money laundering and expensive gifts. With millions from China, the couple allegedly bought that house, a Ferrari, and a condo in Hawaii. In exchange in Albany, son allegedly used her position to manipulate state officials, including at times Governor Hochul, and when she was Lieutenant Governor Hochul, as seen in this blurred-out picture from 2018 contained in the indictment. One of numerous interactions and meetings that officials say pleased Chinese officials, including that Sun boasted about blocking Taiwan officials from meeting with New York leaders.
This indictment should shock New Yorkers.
Mike Balboni, the former head of New York Homeland Security, said the FBI has been tracking foreign actors who for years have been seeking to influence federal and state officials.
Why New York? Why New York City? Because you're trying to, at every level, make sure that the interests, the political and governmental interests of the People's Republic of China are, in fact, recognized and promoted.
It was back in July the FBI searched Sun's North Shore home. Prosecutors say she repeatedly tried to get state officials to downplay China's human rights record. And the FBI said Sun even sent unauthorized letters from the governor's office, making it easier for Chinese communist officials to travel to the U.S.
All right, Jonathan Deans joins us now in studio. So, Jonathan, I guess my first question is about the husband as well. You mentioned him a little bit in your report. What was his tie to China?
Investigators say he ran several businesses and that as a result of this alleged arrangement that the Chinese government agreed to provide business opportunities for the husband to literally make millions of dollars. That according to investigators, and they say that's where a lot of the money came from.
Some people may be watching this and they'll say, okay, you have this couple, they live in this posh area in New York. She keeps moving up through the ranks in New York state government, and yet she's working for China. How was she able to do that for so many years?
One, she was very connected to the Chinese American, Asian American community here in New York, so that she was a trusted figure. That's first. Second, investigators would argue they were on to her for part of the time. You read the indictment, she was questioned. They allege that she lied during some of that questioning, and it takes some time to build these cases. And the governor's office points out they did fire her back in 2023, and the indictment came today.
Okay, Jonathan Deans with that for us tonight. Jonathan, thank you. Now to power and politics in the final stretch of the 2024 race. Vice President Harris and former President Trump intensifying their focus on battleground Pennsylvania with just more than 2 months to go until Election Day. Gabe Gutierrez is covering it all from the White House tonight.
Tonight, the final stretch of the 2024 presidential race is underway. Vice President Harris is set to return to Pennsylvania on Thursday, campaigning with President Biden there just yesterday.
Donald Trump is trying to pull us backward, including back to a time before workers had the freedom to organize.
While former President Trump will be in the state tomorrow after holding a rally there just days ago, blasting Harris for changing her position and now opposing a fracking ban, a key industry in Pennsylvania.
She's vowed repeatedly that we will ban fracking. The people of Pennsylvania are smart. They're not going to fall for it.
Later in the week, he'll head to Wisconsin and North Carolina, where the first general election ballots will be mailed out this Friday in a razor-thin race.
She has a backbone like a ramrod. And she has the moral compass of a saint. This woman knows what she's doing.
Today, the former president off the trail, but on the attack.
I don't know how people can vote for somebody that has destroyed our country. The inflation, the bad economy, but to me, in a way, the worst is what they've allowed to happen at our border.
The next major milestone in the race, next week's debate. A Harris campaign official tells NBC News she'll continue her debate prep Thursday in Pittsburgh, while senior Trump campaign officials say former Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard is helping him sharpen policy attacks. But tonight, Harris's team is still calling for a change to the rules. During the last debate, at the request of the Biden campaign, mics were muted while the other candidate was speaking to prevent interruptions. Now the Harris team wants the mics unmuted at all times.
Gabe Gutierrez joins us tonight from the White House. And Gabe, I want to talk to you about a strange moment on the campaign trail today in Pennsylvania when these signs started popping up in Philly, appearing to be an endorsement of Vice President Harris by the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles today denying they endorsed the vice president, saying they are aware of the counterfeit political ads being circulated and that they're working with their advertising partners to have them removed. Gabe, do we have any idea what happened here and how's the campaign responding?
Well, Tom, the ads have just been removed from 7 locations throughout Philly, and a city spokesperson is calling the ads illegally placed. The local district attorney's office says its election task force is investigating the incident, and a spokesperson for the Harris campaign tells NBC News that they did not purchase the ads. But, Tom, the incident highlights the issue of political misinformation as the presidential race is entering its final stretch before the election. Tom.
And speaking of that final stretch, I understand you have some new reporting on what we can expect from the Harris campaign gearing up for another bus tour in Florida and other places.
Yeah, that's right, Tom. So this bus tour is in Florida. It was launched today with Harris campaign surrogates on the issue of reproductive rights, a major issue heading into the final stretch of this campaign. And tomorrow, the vice president is heading to New Hampshire, where she'll announce a proposal to expand small business tax deductions for startup expenses. Now, again, that's a major issue in this campaign is the economy. She's also promising to cut red tape for small businesses and is setting a goal of 25 million new small business applications in her first term. The Harris campaign has aired multiple TV ads focused on that economic message since the Democratic National Convention as she tries to cut down on Trump's lead on the issue. Tom.
All right, Gabe, thank you for that. For more on the final sprint of the 2024 race, I want to bring in our political pros tonight. Don Calloway, he's a Democratic strategist and host of the Caucus Room podcast, and Mark Lauder, a former strategic communications director on the Trump 2020 campaign. We thank you both for being here. Don, I'm going to start with you. We just heard Gabe there talk about this abortion rights bus tour the Harris campaign is launching in Florida. They want the election to be a lot about reproductive rights. Is this a smart play?
It's absolutely a smart play. We know that these elections are won in the middle with suburban women who are somewhat persuadable, and they often vote based upon their husband's political predilections. But there's a lot of space to be determinative here because we have to remember that this is the first presidential election. Although there was a midterm, this is the first presidential in a post-Dobbs era. And what we're going to see is the political test of the theory of how one can be pro-life but still pro-Roe. And there's a broad gray area in the middle, and I'm very sure that Kamala Harris's polling and opinion makers show her that there's a lot of women to be grabbed in the middle in that space who may be pro-life, who no one wants to encourage abortions, but at the end of the day thought that Roe was a good thing. And this is a real opportunity. And it also shows that Florida is in play based upon that broad amount of suburban women who are there for the taking.
Mark, you know, the Harris-Walz ticket leaning heavily into reproductive rights, but many voters, when they're polled, say it's the economy and immigration that is most important for them. Do you think this is a smart strategy on the Democrats' part? The Democrats' part?
Yeah, I think it's a strategy of desperation. It's about the only issue that they can try to come up with a message on. And while, yes, there are single-issue voters on reproductive rights, but they are on the pro-life side and the pro-abortion side. But one thing many of the women in the middle and people in the middle are struggling with are gas and grocery prices, the wide-open border. And you do not hear Kamala Harris offering any real solutions to lowering those prices or securing the border. In fact, she can't even admit she and Joe Biden are the reason why we have sky-high inflation and a wide-open border.
Don, just before the big debate between Biden and Trump happened, Jen O'Malley Dillon, who's the campaign manager for the Biden campaign, basically said that they were going to win this race. But I want to read you something from the New York Times from just yesterday about the Harris campaign's framing of this election. In her words, campaign manager Jen O'Malley Dillon now says this: "Make no mistake," Dillon wrote in a campaign memo released on Sunday morning, "we head into this final stretch of the race as the clear underdogs." How can it be that a campaign that by all metrics is better off than it was in late July is now pushing a narrative that things are worse than they were when Mr. Biden was in the race? So, Don, can they have it both ways right now? Are they really the underdog?
They're absolutely the underdog. Vice President Harris is the underdog. We have to remember there's never been a woman elected president in this country. So until that happens, she's per se the underdog. But realistically, she's had less time to introduce herself to the American people than Joe Biden did when he was the candidate. That matters. But also the Democratic Party is the party of the big tent. So you have to issue different messages while still on point and aligned with the same values. You have to issue different messages to different constituencies. And part of the message right now is do not get complacent. Yes, there has been an exciting exciting bump in the last 4 weeks, but you can't get complacent and think that this thing is in the bag, because it's absolutely not. And with the broad tent, the broad coalition of voters necessary to build a Democratic coalition, you don't have time for any of them at the margins to get complacent by thinking that we've already got it in the bag. So I think it's a very consistent message from even when President Biden was the candidate, but it's also consistent now to get people to run through this 63-day sprint that's remaining in front of the campaign.
You know, Mark, I mean, the New York Times was smart to point out that they seem to have changed sort of their thinking on this, right? When Biden was at the top of the ticket, they were going to win this race, no problem. Now that it's Harris, it's like we're the underdog here. But, is there an underdog in this race? Because you have former President Trump, who has the biggest name ID in all of the U.S. when it comes to politics. But then you have Vice President Harris, who, whether you like it or not, she's sort of the incumbent right now. So is there an underdog?
Well, I would say because of the horrible economy and the wide open border, she is the underdog. I would also say that despite the month-long honeymoon and free ride she's gotten from the media, she is still 5 points back of where Joe Biden was in 2020. She's also 2 to 4, 5 points back in most of the battleground states. And in an election that was decided by 43,000 votes in 3 states, if you're trailing 2 to 5 points about where you were back then, it's not a good place to be heading into Election Day.
I hear you there. Don, I want to put this up on the screen for you. It's Gallup's enthusiasm polling of Democrats over the last few elections. Let's put it up here on the screen. So you can see right here, 78% of Democrats and Democratic-leaning voters say they are more enthusiastic this year than in previous elections, the highest that has been since 2008. How much of a threat is that to the Republicans and Donald Trump?
It's a big threat, but Democrats have a big lift in front of them up and down the ballot and all throughout the states to translate that enthusiasm into engagement, that engagement into fundraising and the organizing, the registering of voters, and making sure that people have information about where to vote, how and how to make sure that their vote is counted. We know that there are consistent voter suppression efforts throughout the South, particularly in a post-2013 Supreme Court ruling era. So there's a whole lot of organizing work to be done in a compacted amount of time, but that organizing work is fueled by enthusiasm. So it matters that you see Democratic enthusiasm, excitement, and engagement way up, because that's ultimately what has to be translated into people doing the work on the ground for Kamala Harris to win. And so I'm excited to see that engagement very high right now.
I want to get Mark in here before the break. Mark, briefly, has former President Trump figured out how to campaign against Vice President Harris?
I think he's got to just stick with the issues, stick with reality. I mean, Kamala Harris says we're not going to go back. Not go back to what? When groceries were cheap, the border was secure. We're looking forward. How about today, Kamala? Deal with the issues Americans are facing today. She still can't do it, which is why that enthusiasm will wane as people start looking at how is this going to change my life, because all she wants to do is more of the Biden same.
Mark Lauder, Don Calloway, great conversation. We thank you for being on Top Story. Still ahead tonight, an update on the shooting that left a college gymnast dead. The suspect, her own classmate, in custody. You see him here. What we're learning about him and the charges he now faces. And the unusual rescue in Massachusetts. A man trapped waist deep in coal. He was in a coal car on a train. How he was set free. And the big surprise from some college students, I should say, the school announcing a tuition-free year for seniors. We'll tell you where this happened. Stay with us. Okay, we are back now with Top Stories news feed, and we start with the latest on that fatal shooting of a collegiate gymnast in Wisconsin. Chad T. Richards and his attorney appearing in court through a video feed today. He's charged with the intentional homicide shooting and killing of his classmate, Kara Welsh, at an off-campus apartment near the university. Richards' attorney saying the 23-year-old is a student at the school as well. It's unclear what led up to that shooting. All right, a worker rescued from a train in Massachusetts after being trapped in coal for hours. The man seen here wearing a red helmet being hoisted out of the train. Rescue workers pulling him up using a harness attached to a ladder truck. Officials saying it is still not clear how he got caught up in all that coal. He was sent to a hospital for evaluation. We hear he's going to be okay. And a college in New York making a surprise announcement that tuition for its seniors this year will be absolutely free. Cooper Union surprising its students with the announcement on the first day of class. The private college saying any payment made for the 2024 fall semester will be refunded, adding that first, second, and third-year students will receive full scholarships in their final year. The decision made possible by a $6 million donation from different alumni. Okay, when we come back, the mass prison break attempt in the Democratic Republic of Congo. More than 100 prisoners left dead after a stampede and violent clashes. What we're learning about the alarming situation. Stay with us. Back now with our top story spotlight and a new book that shines a light on an election that went down as the most violent in U.S. history that many Americans may not know about. The Louisiana gubernatorial election of 1872 involved corruption, plots to overthrow the government, attempted assassinations, and had major implications on American history. The election also has some striking similarities to today's political landscape and could be a warning of what is at stake. Joining us now is CNN chief political correspondent Dana Bash, a friend of mine as well. She's the co-author of the new book, America's Deadliest Election, which she wrote with David Fisher. Dana, so great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
At NBC, first of all, does it feel weird to be here?
A little.
CNN?
No, not a little, a lot. But it's nice.
Well, you're welcome here, so thanks for being here.
I appreciate your hospitality.
Okay, so people are going to be saying, you could write about so many things. You get a front row seat to history, especially to politics. Why are you writing about this race, and what is it about?
Well, to answer the first question, I have been thinking about writing some kind of book based on the reporting that we do every day in current times. And I just never really settled on wanting to do something specific. With regard to this, I mean, to be totally honest, it fell in my lap. Right. David Fisher, who's my co-author, who is amazing, came to me with this idea. He's written a lot of books with Dan Abrams about history. But this one, because it's centered around an election, a series of elections that went terribly wrong, he thought, you know, maybe you should do it with me. And I said, sure, I'm game. This is a perfect way for me to get into the book business. And boy, am I glad that I did. Because, Tom, I don't know about you. I didn't know anything about this part of American history. And I feel like shame on me for not knowing it, particularly given what we do for a living. 1872, Louisiana, the country is coming off of the Civil War. It is in the middle of Reconstruction. And former slaves, freedmen, are allowed to vote. Well, in 1870, that meant electing a lot of Republicans, the party of Lincoln, and some black elected officials. The segregationists in the South, the Democrats, they didn't like that. So they began to realize that the way to prevent that is to intimidate at the ballot box, is to do whatever they could, just full-on corruption and fraud and violence. And the result was so many hundreds, thousands of people being disenfranchised because of that. And a dispute over who actually won the election, to the point where nobody would concede. It ended up that two people were sworn in as governor by their various factions. There were two legislatures working simultaneously, two slates of judges. And the state of Louisiana was in such chaos and such tumult. And you had the leaders actually calling for their supporters to engage in violence in order to support their point of view. And there was a massacre, a horrible massacre, where 150 black men were just flat out slaughtered, the Colfax massacre. And the legal system that worked its way through to deal with that ended up in federal court. And it went to the Supreme Court. And what the Supreme Court said was that the federal government has no business in civil rights or in these election cases. So that was the beginning of Jim Crow.
Right.
And had that not happened, had this election not happened, we wouldn't have had the Jim Crow laws in this country for 100 years.
And from what I read, those black men that were all killed were trying to uphold the law. They were trying to do the right thing.
Yep.
There's a lot of big names that are loosely connected to the story. People like Abraham Lincoln, Ulysses S. Grant. What did you learn from writing this? I mean, like, what really stood out to you?
What stood out to me was that the violence and corruption and the desire to hold on to power and to what was and to a way of life was so strong that it took the country in a place where it should never be, because the systems were designed to not have the biggest guardrails.
Yeah.
And if you fast forward to what we saw 4 years ago, we saw the guardrails holding, but like just barely. Did not hold with regard to what was supposed to be a peaceful transition of power. But there's so many parallels, Tom, between what was then and now.
And though it never got to this level, it's a good reminder that this has happened in our country, and this could happen.
Yeah, and it was worse.
Much worse. I do want to ask you, because our viewers, obviously, they don't watch CNN. They love NBC. They may recognize you from a lot of big moments on the campaign trail recently, including the debate of all debates, if you will. Talk to our viewers about the debate between President Biden and former President Trump. So much was on the line. It changed this entire election, this entire campaign. At what moment did you realize President Biden was having a very bad debate?
Probably when the viewers at home realized it.
From the get-go.
Pretty early on, yeah. Look, we prepared, and you participated in events like this, for a million scenarios. That was not one that we prepared for, to be completely honest with you. And so we certainly had our plan, and we continued to do and conduct the debate as much as we had planned. But we definitely had to improvise in terms of, and you heard it real time.
Yeah.
Mr. President, you still have 76 seconds left, or whatever it was. Did the same for Donald Trump, because they didn't have the interaction that we expected them to have.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting because right after that debate, you didn't see this, but there was issues in the spin room. The Biden team wasn't coming out. Did you realize at that moment the domino effect it would have? Because if you watch the whole debate, President Biden got a little bit better, but did you have any idea it would have this domino effect where we'd have someone at the top of the Democratic ticket who wasn't Joe Biden?
Not necessarily to the degree that it has ended up happening, but pretty early on, I thought, and, you know, I was quietly talking to, I think you worked with Jake previously, like, oh my gosh, like, is this what is what's happening what I think is happening? And because this was a debate and this was an election where Joe Biden's performance was the ball game, and coming into the debate and the fact that his performance was what it was was clear this was going to be a combustible, huge change. Whether or not it would just mean that he was going to struggle big time and stay at the top of the ticket, or that the party was going to turn on him, we didn't know, but that is what happened.
And then finally, you did have the first sit-down interview with Vice President Kamala Harris and Governor Tim Walz. You got attacked by people on the left for certain questions. You got attacked by people on the right after the interview, which usually means you did a good job. What did you learn about Vice President Harris, and what do you think we can expect in the debate?
She is very prepared for what she wants to talk about, the message that she wants to get across. We knew that from back when she debated, when she was running, was still in 2019, but in the 2020 cycle, that little girl was me. She has her line. She has her sort of sound bites that she wants to get across. But she also is somebody who is still trying to make a name for herself and a policy platform for herself that is separate from President Biden.
Yeah.
Because when she ran in 2019, she was running on her own, and then she had to quickly, you know, put herself underneath all of Joe Biden's platform. So what I really wanted to know was on some of these really controversial issues that are going to decide states like Pennsylvania, like fracking, where does she actually stand? And I thought her answers were interesting. Her non-answer on Donald Trump's racist attacks against her was also telling. I'm trying to figure out if it was just because she just is doing the sort of back of the hand, I'm not dealing with that, or she's saving it for the debate.
Yeah, I want to ask you, I said that was the last question, but I actually want to ask you, there's this issue of muting the mics that is coming up now for this ABC debate next week, and the Harris team wants the mics unmuted. I mean, we learned a lot in your debate about how to sort of do these debates. Some people were happy with it, others weren't. It is what it is. What do you think is good if you could sort of set the rules? And I know you don't really.
That's not my right. I know.
Yeah, but I mean, you did this debate, and a lot of people learned a lot of things.
We did learn a lot of things. The reason the mics were muted is because the Biden campaign requested it. They're the ones who came at the whole idea of doing the debates early. They wanted the mics muted because they thought that that would help to keep Donald Trump controlled.
Yeah.
The problem is it helped keep Donald Trump controlled.
Yeah.
And that's why his campaign wants to keep the mics muted, because it gave him some forced discipline. And so it did make for some missed moments because of the way that the mics were.
Or slip-ups, but
which is
right.
exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, two different sides to the same coin. And that's why.
That's why the Harris campaign wants them unmuted.
Correct.
To see what would happen.
Correct. Because they want a raw Donald Trump.
All right. Dana Bash, her new book with David Fisher. It's called America's Deadliest Election. Make sure to buy it if you love history, if you love politics. I think you could write a second book about what happened in 2024.
Let's do it.
Because you've been so part of it right together. That would be great. All right, Dana Bash first. Thank you so much for being here,
So good to see you.
Yep. Coming up, we're going to head to Venezuela and the latest on the disputed election there. A new arrest warrant issued for the opposition leader who may have actually won that election. Is this another move by Nicolás Maduro to keep his grip on power as mass protests against him continue? Stay with us. We are back now with the Americas. The U.S. is condemning the Venezuelan government after a judge issued an arrest warrant for a former presidential candidate. Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro now saying his opponent should go to prison, accusing him of various crimes. The opposition calling it a crackdown on dissent. NBC's Ellison Barber is following this one for us tonight.
Edmundo González, Venezuela's newest president, or a fugitive on the run, according to Nicolás Maduro and his allies.
Criminal, asesino, terrorista.
González is a criminal. A new arrest warrant issued by the Public Ministry of Venezuela accuses González of forging public documents, inciting disobedience, sabotaging computer systems, and attempting to usurp government functions. All of the charges appearing to stem from the country's July presidential election, an election that independent UN-backed election observers describe as lacking, quote, basic transparency and integrity.
Este señor cobarde, González Urrutia.
Maduro referring to González on his weekly television show, saying in part, quote, this man has the nerve to say he doesn't recognize laws. He doesn't recognize anything. González has not directly responded to the new arrest warrant, but the United States is calling it a power grab.
This is just another example of Mr. Maduro's efforts to maintain power by force and to refuse to recognize that Mr. González won the most votes on the 28th of July.
González challenged Maduro's decade-long reign, and according to an Associated Press analysis of voter tallies released by his opposition allies, González won by more than a 2-to-1 margin. Maduro disputing that, claiming he won by more than 1 million votes. González hasn't been seen in public since the day after the election.
For the moment, González has said through his lawyer that he's planning to fight it out in Venezuela, and I guess is ready to go to jail if that's what it takes.
Protesters supporting González have repeatedly flooded the streets of Venezuela's capital city, demanding Maduro step aside. Journalist Manuel Reda has been in Venezuela reporting on the elections.
González has a much stronger claim that he has the support of the people. It's very hard now for Maduro to say that he's being elected by the Venezuelan people. What can swing it in González's favor would be some kind of dissent within Maduro's rank, and especially within the military.
The U.S. now trying to increase the pressure from abroad, seizing a plane with ties to Maduro. According to Attorney General Merrick Garland, the plane was purchased in the United States for $13 million through a shell company and smuggled out of the United States so it could be used by Maduro and his associates in violation of U.S. sanctions. The U.S. hoping it sends Maduro a message.
We have the expertise, we have the reach, and we have the global partnerships in order to effect change against anybody, including powerful government heads who think they're untouchable.
But as of today, Maduro remains in the presidential palace, and his support among Venezuela's military leadership seems rock solid.
Ellison Barber joins us now in studio. So, Ellison, without the military sort of flipping and helping Gonzalez, there's nothing really he can do. Can the U.S. do anything? Does he just stay in hiding? What's next for him?
So Kirby alluded in his remarks today to the possibility that the United States is going to take additional steps with what they described as their partners. He didn't get into detail, but it seems like possibly a next step would be increasing the enforcement on sanctions that are already in place. That's sort of what we saw happen with the plane, or even adding additional sanctions to try and put pressure that way. But again, speaking with experts, they seem to say really the only way they think this changes is if there's some sort of crack within Maduro's ranks and primarily within the military.
Ellison Barber for us. Ellison, we thank you for that. We're following other international headlines and top stories, global watch as well. We start with a massive attempted escape at Congo's largest prison. Take a look at this. Officials say 24 inmates tried to escape when a stampede broke out. Guards firing at those trying to escape. At least 129 people are dead, 59 injured. The prison holds more than 12,000 people, and activists say inmates have complained about lack of food and unsanitary conditions. Pope Francis kicking off his ambitious 12-day Asia-Pacific tour. The 87-year-old, you see him here, landed in Jakarta, Indonesia, greeted by waving crowds. Pope Francis met with a group of refugees living in Indonesia and will address the nation's leaders. He is set to travel to East Timor, Singapore, and Papua New Guinea in an effort to urge global action to fight climate change. It's his longest trip abroad as Pope. Okay, when we come back, a life-changing job. We're going to take you inside the skincare company looking to change the unemployment rate for people with disabilities, their commitment to hiring those with vision impairment and other disabilities, and how they're making their facility accessible to ensure success. You're going to love this story. It's incredible what they're doing. Stay with us. Finally tonight, for some people living with disabilities, finding a job can be daunting. Now, a Pennsylvania skincare company is dedicated to changing that one hire at a time. Our Valerie Castro has an inside look at how they're creating a more inclusive workplace and hoping to inspire other companies to do the same.
Ethan Riddell considers himself lucky.
I was very, very shocked. I didn't know I was going to make it.
Landing his first job at Clean Logic in Pennsylvania about 2 years ago. His task at the skincare company, assembling packaging with his hands.
Do you remember how you felt on your very first day here?
I was a little nervous.
And now, how do you feel when you come to work every day?
I feel very, very, very good. I like working with my hands, and it gives me the ability to work with other people who have disabilities too.
Ethan is blind and one of many employees here with a disability.
Many of our employees, this is their first job. In many cases, we're struggling to obtain employment. This has been their opportunity to learn the skills and live an independent life.
1 in 4 people in the U.S. live with a disability. According to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, only 37% are employed. Clean Logic hopes to change that. Currently, more than 80% of the company's workforce lives with disabilities. Clean Logic's goal, increase the employment rate for that community by 10% over the next 10 years by making a workplace that can accommodate everyone.
So when you talk about making things accessible, this is part of that?
Yeah. So what we have here is high visibility and raised tape, and the high visibility allows our visually impaired team members to know exactly where they need to go to their workstations. And under this tape, there is a wire that allows our blind team members who use canes to follow it as well.
Company co-founder Mike Gesser says he was inspired by his daughter, 11-year-old Rosemary, who was born with a disability.
I went into dad mode and started to create what I thought would be an accessible and inclusive environment for her and also for anybody with a disability.
His business partner, Isaac Shapiro, drew inspiration from his own mother, blind since the age of 7.
Because there's a lack of awareness around what people can do with vision loss, companies do not think they could hire someone that has a disability, and so that's been causing the high unemployment rate amongst blind and visually impaired individuals.
For some employees, their disability isn't physical. Zaytun Yancey is on the spectrum.
How do you think you've changed since you've started working here?
I become independent, and I felt I can do things on my own and really focus.
That focus comes into play as she sews, a new skill she learned at this job.
What would you say to companies that might be reluctant to hire somebody like yourself?
There are people who want to try new things, and they really need your help. So please step up and help others who can help you make the community and company going forward.
Don't be afraid. Disabled people can do the same jobs that sighted people can, just in different ways.
CleanLogic's co-founders hopeful they've created not just a product, but an all-inclusive opportunity.
We want to see our story be able to make an impact in other companies in our industry, but also see other industries hire individuals with disabilities.
And we also want to mention that CleanLogic's mission also empowers nonprofits through Inspiration Foundation, donating a portion of sales to fund tech grants for the blind and visually impaired. All right, we thank you for watching Top Story on this Tuesday night. I'm Tom Llamas, back in New York. So great to be with you. Stay right there. More news now on the way.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.